MSW Media.
The rule of law is not just some lawyer's turn of phrase. It is the very foundation of our democracy. The essence of the rule of law is that like cases are treated alike. That there not be one rule for Democrats and another for Republicans, one rule for the powerful, another for the powerless, one rule for the rich and another for the poor, or different rules depending upon one's race or ethnicity. To serve as Attorney General at this critical time is a calling I am honored and eager to answer.
So now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Welcome to episode 183 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, July 24th. I'm Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Strzok. Got a lot to cover today, including the fallout for the GOP.
Anything happened in the last week?
As the GOP scrambles to respond as Joe Biden ends his candidacy, the conviction of Guo Wengui in New York, and of course, Senator Bob Menendez.
Yeah, 18 felony counts, guilty on all counts. Moral of the story, don't get bribed with gold bars that have serial numbers on them.
Yeah, weaponized DOJ, Allison. Weaponized DOJ, convicting Bob Menendez and Hunter Biden. Weaponization of the government. Where's Jim Comer?
Though I think Biden should pardon his son on the way out. Just do it. Why the fuck not? And we're also going to talk about the latest in Fulton County, which is the case against Trump and his co-defendants, the RICO case down there, as well as an update on the Alexander Smirnov case. Remember that guy? He's the Russian agent who gave all the fake Biden evidence over to Jim Comer. And we have new Secret Service documents showing the massive failure, the number of Mar-a-Lago security breaches. And Jason Leopold, FOIA King, right? This wasn't about necessarily these documents weren't about the classified documents, but you'll probably not be surprised at all how lax the security was down there while those documents were sitting there. But first, before we get into any of it, we have a ton of new patrons to thank, including Mary Barrio, Carrie, Sean, Michelle Standridge, Laura, Steve Phillips, and Seal Tilney. Thank you all so much for supporting independent media. We couldn't do this show without you. And to thank you, we're going to host our second gala of the year for patrons. Check your inbox because we've sent out an email. We're doing it August 17th, and it's going to be in D.C. the day after our live show in D.C. at Hamilton. And that live show will feature you, Pete, right? Mm-hmm. Andy McCabe, Brian Greer, our SEPA expert on the Jack podcast, Glenn Kirshner, and Dana Goldberg is a new addition.
Nice.
And then at the gala, it'll be me, Pete, Andy, Dana, and there'll probably be more guests announced as it rolls closer. But check your inbox for that. See if you can grab your spot. I know it's kind of short notice, but hey, everything right now is short notice. So I'm looking forward to that. And Pete, you've just confirmed you're going to be with me at the show that we're having on August 24th in San Francisco. That'll be the end of the Democratic National Convention. And it's going to be a party, I guarantee you. And Pete will be there. Olivia Troy has committed to coming. And we're going to have a really great live show in San Francisco, August 24th. There are still tickets available for the DC show on August 16th and the August 24th San Francisco show. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. But thanks to our patrons, because of you, we're able to have these galas and have these events and travel around and meet and greet all of you. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Super looking forward to heading out to San Francisco. I, rarely get a chance to go out to the West Coast, and I know a bunch of our stuff here in DC. Folks come from all around, but it's a lot easier to get here if you're on the East Coast. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting out and seeing all our supporters in San Francisco. So grab those tickets. I'm willing to bet it'll sell out, but I'm super looking forward to it.
All right. So couple of things happened over the weekend. Just a few. First of all, I would like to dedicate this show to Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. We lost a fierce defender of democracy in Congress this weekend to pancreatic cancer, and she will be truly, truly missed. And then, of course, Sunday, I woke up to, I slept in. So everybody knows I slept in on Sunday. I woke up to the news that President Joe Biden had ended his candidacy for president for re-election. And then it was within an hour, wasn't it, Pete, that he came out, maybe like 15 minutes, came out and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to take his place atop the ticket. And we record this show on Monday afternoon. It's been about 24 hours since she announced her candidacy. And it's been a absolute whirlwind of support and endorsements and money. And I mean, it's been pretty incredible to watch.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it was interesting. And for those of you listening who are patrons and you heard the bonus episode, we were talking about this last time about like, if something's going to happen, like the Democrats need to stop the circular firing squad, just, I use the analogy of like, you get some plan if you're in the Army or the FBI and it gets thrown to hell, just come up with a different plan and go do it. Stop, thinking about it. And you were talking about in comedy, the idea like, commit to the bit, stick with the bit. And right. I'll be darned if, President Biden, and I would, I'd be remiss too if, beyond Sheila Jackson Lee, also Joe Biden, what an extraordinary thing to do, to be in the position of the presidency, to choose to stand down for the good of the country, given his lifetime, his career service, not only in the White House as the president, as the vice president, but for so long in the Senate. One of the best, if not the best, president of my lifetime, certainly. And when you look at his legislative achievements, I just unparalleled, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is the courts, whether it is student loans, whether it is insulin and other medications. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on about what he's been able to achieve. And so having spent, for better or worse, as kind of a DC insider for the past 20 plus years, I've seen firsthand very senior people in politics. There is nothing harder. It is, in my opinion, harder than a billionaire walking away from their billions. There's nothing harder for somebody in politics to walk away from the position and power. So credit to him for doing that. He, in my opinion, will go down as a hero, is a hero now. But it's been unbelievable. And, to the point of people standing behind, it's unbelievable. And we were talking right before we started recording this. I mean, beyond. Yeah,
let's talk about these fundraising numbers.
Yeah, it's nuts. So Team Harris, they've written out, so the first 24 hours, they have raised over $81 million, which is the largest 24-hour raise in presidential history, period. That includes 43,000 new recurring donors. 60% of the 888,000 grassroots donors, 60% of them made their first contribution of 2024. So these are not, this is not Elon Musk telling Donald, hey, I'm going to give you tens of millions of dollars, and Donald getting up. Literally, I don't know if people picked up on it because, Trump, I think most people fell asleep before he got done with his, stupefying speech at the DNC. But later on, he had a campaign appearance where he talked about needing to take care of Elon Musk for giving him all that money. That is not what's happening with Kamala Harris. This is nearly 1 million grassroots donors. This is people from the ground. This is not the moneyed elite, but it's impressive.
And over 500,000 of them, or roughly 500,000 of them, are first-time donors in the cycle. So it's like you said, it's not the Elon Musks, but it's also not those of us who've already donated to Joe Biden in this cycle, because that would have counted. They're not saying first-time donors to Kamala Harris. They're saying first-time donors to the Biden campaign, because she took over the war chest, which had about $96 million in cash on hand, and then single-handedly raised $81 million from these small dollar donors. Then there's an additional $44 million from, I think, Voto Latino PAC, and then another 150. Like, all told, she's hauled in $250 million in a day. And that's just, I don't even know. There's nothing to compare it to. And then when you get, and this is, I thought, I was talking to Pete Dominic earlier, and I was telling him, seeing all these endorsements roll in, AFL-CIO, LPAC, the Congressional Black Caucus, the AAPI caucus in Congress, the Progressive Caucus, all of these endorsements, all of the senators, all of the representatives, all the governors that have endorsed, to see all of those endorsements come in a day that we would normally see trickle in over a year, just absolutely, that is very, very powerful. It makes me wish our election cycle started in July instead of, a year ago. Everything is done quickly. She's already secured over 1,100 pledged delegates. She's more than halfway there. And I think one of the finance chairs of Biden's finance chair said that she is on track to secure enough pledged delegates to clinch the nomination by the end of business today, as you listen to this show, by the end of business Wednesday. Again, just absolutely incredible unity. And I haven't ever seen anything like this since probably 2008, right? With Obama.
Yeah, and it's clear. I mean, there are a lot of variables that she has managed to navigate. I mean, there are a lot of ambitious people, and there are a lot of people who are looking, saying, okay, if we support her now, what does that mean if I want to run, not so much for the Democratic ticket in 2024, but what does it mean if I want to run in 28? So to walk into this landscape where you've got a sort of a path where you need to convince people you can do it, you need to convince donors you can do it, you need to convince political leaders you can do it, you need to convince political opponents that they need to fall in line behind you, it's a pretty tall task. And I remember reading yesterday saying, oh, well, she should have enough delegates in place for the nomination on Wednesday. But it's been so effective, as you said, they moved that up to, a few hours from now. So again, a lot of really impressive work that's been going on across the board. And it's a virtuous cycle, right? I mean, we were talking about all these low-level grassroots donors, but the big money is also the ones who give to the super PACs, the folks who had kind of said, we're going to stop and maybe withhold some of the pledges until we figure out what Biden is going to do. They're falling back into line. And so not only do you get the big ticket donors at a national level who are recommitting, you're also getting people on the down ballot races. People are getting excited again about, donating to a Senate race, to donating to a congressional race. And if the Democrats are going to retake the House, if they have any chance of saving and keeping the Senate, and I do want to talk to you about who our VP is going to be, because that question plays into these down ballot questions. But it's been a very impressive 24 hours. And we can talk about the convention later, but I cannot wait. If the Republicans gave you Milwaukee and one Kid Rock song and a Hulk Hogan speech, I cannot wait to see the music and entertainment speeches beyond the heavyweight politicians. They're going to show up and talk about presidential nominee Kamala Harris. Well, can't wait for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she has actually refused to take part in the She's not going to preside for the Bibi Netanyahu joint address to Congress. So there's that. And you were talking about down ballot. Roger Sullenberger, I believe he's with the Daily Beast, just tweeted out a little bit ago that Senate Democrats tripled their cycle record for individual grassroots donations in a single day. And that's per the DSCC. So those down ballot races, if I feel like if we, if you asked me, let's see, if you asked me a year ago, I would have said, we probably are going to have a real hard time holding the Senate. And then if you asked me about 6 months ago, I would say we're still on track. If you asked me about 2 weeks ago, I would have said, I don't think we're on track anymore. But today, I think not only are we on track, but I think we have a real good shot. So this kind of unity is going to, like you said, it's going to affect the entire ballot all the way up and down. We're post-Roe. It's 44,000 Black women on a call raised over $1.5 million yesterday. Just like all these incredible news stories coming out, I think are huge. But now here's the thing. What's Comer going to do now? Because at the very beginning of this Congress, this, particular Congress, Donald Trump went to congressional Republicans and said, I need you to investigate Joe Biden, right? And his whole family. And so they have been. And of course, we've seen the Dan Goldmans and the Moskowitzes be like, hold your vote now. Hold your impeachment vote now. Well, why? You don't have the votes? Oh gosh. Because they keep using evidence from guys like Smirnov that have been completely debunked or cherry-picked behind closed doors interviews that they won't release the transcripts for. And so, what are they going to do now? They have to throw away all their Let's Go Brandon crap.
Buy new flags all around, but send all the old ones to Martha Annalito.
Oh yeah, what's her flag going to be this week? She can't be happy. But what do you think about the Republican response here? They seem to be panicking.
Yeah, and they have every right to be. And what I don't want to do is I think the Republicans got so smug and so complacent coming out of the RNC. The last thing I want to do myself or see from the Democrats at all is any sort of smugness or complacency or we got it. But really, this move shoots down so many avenues of attack that the Republicans were thinking about doing. The first is everything having to do with Biden, the Biden crime family, the corruption of Joe Biden, the corruption of Hunter, all these, they out the window. Doesn't matter. The whole point about Biden is old and infirm. Well, guess what? Donald Trump is the oldest presidential nominee in our nation's history, period, full stop. If you want to talk about mental infirmity, if you want to talk about coherence, if you want to talk about mental illness, if you want to talk about early onset Alzheimer's or any sort of dementia, let alone sociopathic mental illness, let's talk about Donald Trump. So, and that is, you cannot, there is nobody else anywhere around that you can lodge that attack. And they had made that a centerpiece of talking about, Joe Biden's too old to serve. He's going to be how old when he's done in 2028? All of those arguments now apply to one person, and that's Donald Trump. If you want to go after Kamala Harris for, and there's some indication now that they're, going back to her, trying to pull up things from, sexual history or past, but really? You want to compare her to the man who cheated on every one of his 3 wives with a former wife, who cheated with the third wife of the Playboy model when the wife was pregnant and a porn star when she was postpartum and was accused and, found judicially as a sexual, assaulter? You really want to talk about comparing somebody's, consensual sexual past with this man's history of deviance and criminal behavior? So you can't do that. And then finally, if you want to go after, Kamala's history about whether, she was, born in the U.S. or whether or not what it means that she's South Asian descent. Well, let's look at Vance's spouse, also of South Asian descent. And if you want to start talking about what that means and whether or not that's acceptable, great. Let's look at the Republican ticket. So many of these sort of avenues of attack that they think they might have, they're really in a worse spot. So I don't doubt. The racism is strong. The misogyny is strong. To me, those are the logical avenues of attack. But I really don't think, like, if you're trying to persuade undecided suburban voters, particularly undecided women, if you want to start attacking a woman in that way, given Trump's history, good luck with that. So Now, I
have one more question too, because from a counterintelligence perspective, we talked about, I think last week we covered the story about the Department of Justice being able to shut down that Russian AI bot farm. Now, let's say that the foreign bad actors had all of their, AI and social media disinformation and psychographic targeting pointed at Joe Biden, right? Now, what's the lag time for somebody like Russia, say, to retool all that crap? Like, it can't, I'm assuming it can be done fairly quickly, but there has to be some sort of oh shit, we got to regroup. And they don't have a lot of money. They ran out of, they couldn't pay their Chat GPT bill. And so that's why the bots started malfunctioning. That's probably how they got caught. But what's the lag time on some like a cyber attacking pivot like that?
Yeah, so look, I mean, it's not going to take long at all. I mean, particularly compared to the old days where you were like trying to like fabricate a story and, create false records to give to some print journalist who would get it in a paper overseas somewhere that might get eventually picked up by the New York Times or Herald Tribune or something. It's some big, all this coming out of some big intelligence service and a big Soviet bureaucracy. It's a much faster process now and not hard to pivot. But the problem is, what are they pivoting to? I mean, the Republicans don't know where to pivot yet. And so the question, I mean, historically, the truth of the matter is that certainly the Black American population has been a target of Russian and before that Soviet disinformation, particularly trying not so much to change the vote, but to suppress it, to get people to check out and say, you know what, I'm not going to vote at all. And so the national pressure points are the issues of race in America, the issues of whether or not somebody actually represents minority interests, the question of, you look and you say, okay, the Israel Gaza conflict, the natural tensions that are there between the Arab American population, the Jewish American population. There are things that are in the system that if you're a disinformationist, you can use that to sit there and say, look, no, there's no real candidate that supports this cause, so you don't need to vote at all. It's not worth your time. You're not going to get anywhere. Right. So, the question now is, I think they can move, but what is it that they're going to say? So what we do know is the U.S. intel community said that Russia, again, favors Trump. It is absolutely reasonable to believe that they are working right now to try and help get him elected. But the question is, what's the message that's going to do that? And I think once you see the Republicans figure out what their line of attack is, then you'll find the propagandists, the sort of usual suspects, beginning to fall in line behind that and amplify it. But I think it's probably a little too early. But it's fair to say, the people who watch Russian media on the U.S. side, on social media and elsewhere, they're just like in the Republican Party. I think there's a sense of panic, particularly within Russian media circles, about what the hell do we do now? I mean, Kamala is still going to be a supporter of Ukraine and a supporter of NATO, and has historically been a strong supporter of the intelligence community. So this is not anything. She's not J.D. Vance sitting there saying, I don't know why we have all these foreign entanglements. I don't care about Ukraine. We need to be at home. She's very much like Biden in traditional sort of, U.S. as a global leader strategically and militarily. And so they're not happy about it at all.
Which used to be the Republican platform, if you can believe it. I'm old enough to remember. All right. Well, we have to take a quick break. We have a lot of other news to get to, including the Smirnov stuff and the Guo Wengui stuff. But we do have to take a quick break. So everybody stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back. We have more new patrons to thank, including Terry Cook, Catherine, Sarah in Iowa, Chris Hanlon, Tracy Gray, You Had Me at Hot Teabag, and Richard Johnson. Thank all of you so much for your support. Thank you for allowing us to put this together, for being part of the team and supporting the news that we bring you every week. And so without further ado, let's go down to Florida. And there's some national security news. And this is coming from Jason Leopold, the FOIA czar, who is writing for Bloomberg. Last week, the Secret Service finally responded to my Mar-a-Lago security request. The agency's Protective Intelligence and Assessment Division turned over more than 100 pages of documents, the details of which have not been previously reported. The 159 pages of records provide a behind-the-scenes look at how the agency responds to potential threats against presidential protectees. Taken together, they reveal dozens of incidents where people gained access to Mar-a-Lago while Trump was at the resort, despite not having the authorization to be there. In a couple of instances, those individuals were mistakenly waved through checkpoints by Secret Service or Mar-a-Lago security. It doesn't appear that any of the individuals who gained access to Mar-a-Lago posed an immediate threat to Trump, according to the documents. Still, many of the offenders were charged with trespassing and resisting arrest, and several were sent to mental health facilities. In late 2018, an 18-year-old college student arrived at Mar-a-Lago while Trump was visiting. After walking through a tunnel near the pool area, he was screened at a checkpoint by Secret Service and allowed through. During his brief visit, he entered a secure area and uploaded videos of his escapades to Snapchat. One was titled, quote, "Sneaking into the Trump Club is like taking candy from a baby."
Oh my God.
Secret Service agents, eventually realizing the student wasn't supposed to be there, questioned him about his presence. He told them, quote, he wanted to explore and was curious, unquote, and acknowledged that he knew Trump was going to be there. The Secret Service determined the student wasn't a threat and was, quote unquote, sent on his way. Ultimately, he was charged with entering or remaining in a restricted building or grounds, a misdemeanor.
All right, about 6 months later, according to Jason Leopold and his new documents, another man was detained by Mar-a-Lago security and officers of the Palm Beach Police Department for trespassing. He told them he was there because he was the commander-in-chief and wanted to survey Mar-a-Lago because it was his birthright. He said that ruling families of the world were scheduled to meet at Trump's residence for an interdimensional peace conference. Okay.
Was it Marianne Williamson?
The intruder said he had no intention of harming Donald Trump, but that he believed Trump wasn't doing a good job. And whenever Trump was in town, the man said he would go to a nearby park and communicate with Trump via Morse code through the use of lighters. And the man was taken to the Palm Beach Police Department to be questioned by Secret Service agents. He refused to speak with them. Police had the man involuntarily committed to a mental health facility.
On another occasion, on December 30th, 2018, a man showed up in Mar-a-Lago, physically approached security, and said he was there to check in. The man refused to leave and was arrested by the Palm Beach police for criminal trespassing. During an interview, the man said he wanted Trump to sign an executive order to, quote, release $6 trillion he believed he was owed for his marketing strategy associated with the production of a video game rental idea. He believed Trump was holding his money hostage, not an unreasonable belief, but he said he should be executed for his actions. Now, when informed he was banned from Mar-a-Lago, he responded that he couldn't guarantee he wouldn't visit again.
All right. And in another case, 2 men were seen by Palm Beach police taking photographs near Mar-a-Lago on March 10th, 2020. They were asked to leave, but a few hours later they returned, but this time they refused to leave. Palm Beach police then shattered the windows of the car in order to extract them from their vehicle. One of the men explained he visited Mar-a-Lago in hopes of speaking with a lawmaker, the CIA, or one of Trump's children regarding the deep state. The man said the deep state was tracking him through a radio frequency identification chip implanted in his left arm. Both men were arrested by Palm Beach police for trespassing and resisting arrest. The Secret Service later conducted interviews with the man and at least one family member to determine if they posed a threat.
Now, later that year, another man showed up at Mar-a-Lago and refused to leave. He demanded to speak with Trump about a resume he'd sent in as part of a job application for, quote, the Inspector General position, unquote. He claimed he sent several messages to Trump through the White House website. The Secret Service determined that he had, quote, submitted 3 comments to the White House website regarding his desired position, his interest in stimulating the economy, and a proposed plan of action, unquote. He was arrested by Palm Beach police for trespassing and resisting arrest.
And another incident took place in February of 2021. A woman who claimed to be part of Space Force said she rode her bike hundreds of miles to meet with Trump. Palm Beach police gave her a written trespass warning, told her not to return, and sent her on her way. A couple hours later, she returned and said she needed to share classified information with Trump. Palm Beach police arrested her for trespassing. The Secret Service reviewed the police report, conducted a background check on the woman, and logged it into a database. 8 months later, the woman returned and was arrested again at the club's entrance. The Secret Service conducted a more detailed review and found that in the weeks leading up to her latest arrest, she'd visited Mar-a-Lago numerous times. On several occasions, she had attempted to hand Trump a binder that contained what she said was classified information about military protocol related to Space Force, the Air Force, and NASA. The Secret Service documents show that the woman possessed several drawings and handwritten texts referencing chironic frequency panel, plasmic override chambers, copper-induced coils, and additional writings about energy creation.
Secret Service agents tried to get her to share additional details, but she refused, saying they did not have proper security clearances to discuss the Space Force.
Need to know.
Yeah, the documents say that, good OPSEC. The documents say that the woman's frequent appearances in Mar-a-Lago after her initial arrest were not logged into the Secret Service's Protective Threat Management System, which is used by the agency to record data on potentially threatening behavior and incidents. When she was released by the Palm Beach police after her arrest, she tweeted at Trump, according to the document. Quote, Mr. Donald Trump, she wrote, Trinity Code is highly upset with the way you have been ignoring protocols and disrespectful enough to shut me away from assisting. She concluded, I'm ashamed of you, brother.
Okay.
You know what this doesn't include? This doesn't include all these other people that we read previously in the news about the woman who pretended to be a Rothschild heir who is really a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. It doesn't include the Chinese national who was arrested with all kinds of electronic devices in multiple cell phones. This doesn't include any number of people who were stumbling around the area behind the pool where Nada and De Oliveira and others were busy shuttling boxes filled with classified information to and from various storage rooms. It's mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. And today, Comer and Raskin together have called for the resignation of the Secret Service director, Cheatle, because they questioned her today as part of the follow-up on the assassination attempt at the Trump rally, right? I'd like an investigation into this kind of shit. Like what kind of, although I have to assume that special counsel has probably done a lot of this investigating himself as far as who had access to the areas where the classified documents were kept. But the fact that that lady was like left off the incident report for a bunch of visits to Mar-a-Lago, like why is that happening? It's just, it's bothersome to me.
And I've said it before on the pod, I'll say it again. My experience with the Secret Service, whether in the field, whether visiting the White House, is they're very focused and, notwithstanding recent events, pretty good at ensuring physical security around the president. But they do, when it comes to like electronics or other surveillance equipment, there's I could not, going into the West Wing, going to the Situation Room, visiting the White House, I'm fairly as an FBI agent, you leave your gun behind, right? You don't bring it because you're not getting it in there. You got to lock it up. So even as a 1811 federal law enforcement officer, you're not bringing that into the West Wing and in the White House. I'm very confident I could not have smuggled in a gun, a knife, anything dangerous, but they could have cared less. If I had 5 cell phones, 3 odd listening devices, 2 tape recorders, a couple of MZ sniffers. I mean, that just isn't what they are.
What's an MZ sniffer? Sort
of focused on doing. Like it's something that'll take, when your cell phone, one of the ways that your cell phone works is it has to go out to a cell phone tower and say, hey, look, I am Allison's cell phone. Here's my unique identifier. So if somebody's trying to call Allison, I'm sitting right here in this cell tower coverage. And this is my unique sort of fingerprint so that if somebody says, I want to call Allison, you need to route it right here. And cell phones have, and SIM cards, both of them have unique sort of fingerprints and numbers that are unique to that. Well, if you're trying to collect intelligence, if I know, if I'm interested in Allison and I know what the particular sort of fingerprints of your cell phone are, it makes it much easier to monitor what you might be texting, who you might be calling. Now imagine if you're a Russian or a Chinese intelligence officer or anybody, and you're trying to figure out not so much what Allison's phone number is, but, what's the National Security Advisor's cell phone? If I'm able to watch and see a motorcade from the CIA pull up, what new cell phones do I see pop up on my, scanning equipment? So from an intelligence collection standpoint, that's super useful. I mean, you extraordinarily valuable if you're trying to collect intelligence. And so if you're down at Mar-a-Lago, and again, if I'm at Mar-a-Lago, if I'm a Russian or Chinese intelligence officer, I'm not sitting here trying to pretend to be a crazy person. I'm not getting some kid in all likelihood. And I'm telling you, give me a budget of $500,000 in a couple of years, and I could get multiple people inside Mar-a-Lago. And the way I would do it is I would target people who are underpaid wait staff. I would target people who are caterers or vendors. Trump is notoriously
all the
cheap.
people who would pop up on our insider threat training?
All of it. Yeah, all of it. Like I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, I want to be, I'll sell flowers and I will cut a deal into Mar-a-Lago and be 20% cheaper than every other florist in West Palm because I know Trump is cheap. And you know what? I'm really actually losing money, but I'm not going to say that because I'm going to take it off the top. And by the way, use this florist. He's great. He's got an arrangement. I'm probably giving a little bit of a kickback to Mar-a-Lago. And suddenly that quote unquote florist is actually an asset of some foreign intelligence service. It is so, and that goes to the whole issue about like when you look at financial incentives and financial vulnerabilities, Trump is so greedy. Trump is such a cheapskate. It is extraordinarily easy if I were a malicious foreign actor who was resourced to get somebody in there. And the fact that they can't keep crazy people out, there's no way in hell they're keeping trained people out. And the problem is, notwithstanding Eileen Cannon running amok and not really caring about national security, there were in fact boxes of highly classified U.S. national defense information floating around unsecured in Mar-a-Lago when everybody like this, somebody demanding, Space Force information she couldn't even tell Secret Service about, Trinity Code is highly upset. Thank God. She was not apparently reading classified information.
Yeah. Well, there's still, as far as we know, we haven't heard from Jack Smith, but in some I think in a filing, he had said that there's still an unknown number of boxes that they don't have back yet. So it's just frightening, all this kind of stuff that goes on down there. Just our secrets just there for, Trinity Code to go in and, I mean, she was stopped, but there seems to be a little bit of a lax security. And like you said, Secret Service really is only protecting their person, right? It's not necessarily about whether they have, what are they called? MZ scanners or cell phones or listening devices or anything else like that. So anyway, thank you for answering that question because I was really curious about that. All right, we have to take another break, but we have more news. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. We have more new patrons to thank, including Berta5078, Stephen Sucher, Elms from London, The True Mamada, Melanie Scouten, Robert McKenzie, and Susan Leishman. Thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for your contributions. You make everything possible. All right, let's talk about some Justice Department wins, because first up, this is from the Washington Post. Exiled Chinese businessman who once had close ties to former White House advisor Bannon was convicted of defrauding his online followers for more than $1 billion with a B dollars. That's according to federal prosecutors last week. Guo Wengui, also known as Miles Guo, was charged last year with wire fraud and money laundering after using money from thousands of followers to support his extravagant lifestyle, according to prosecutors in their indictment. Guo began amassing a following around 2018 through several avenues, including his web network called GTV Media, which researchers said spread disinformation about coronavirus in the 2020 election. In the March 2023 indictment filed in the Southern District of New York, prosecutors said Guo had, quote, led a complex conspiracy to solicit funds he used to pay for a yacht. By the way, that was the yacht that Steve Bannon was arrested on by the post office cops. A luxury car and a 50,000 square foot mansion. 50,000 square foot mansion. He was convicted on 9 of the 12 counts after the trial that lasted about 2 months. In a statement Tuesday, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said Guo defrauded followers to bolster his life of excess. Quote, today, Guo's schemes have been put to an end. So.
Yeah. Now, Guo made a fortune developing real estate in China before being accused of crimes including fraud and bribery, according to the Washington Post. He came to the United States in 2015 and bought a penthouse apartment in New York, according to prosecutors. Now, once he'd moved to New York, Guo garnered an online following by posting videos and giving interviews, quote, claiming to advance a movement against the Chinese Communist Party, unquote, according to the indictment. His comments on China led Guo to become close with Bannon, who left the White House in 2017. The pair formed a partnership that prompted scrutiny from the Trump administration. Now, when Bannon was arrested in August 2020 and charged with wire fraud and money laundering, after saying he was raising money for a U.S.-Mexico border wall, he was living, as you said, on Guo's yacht. Now, Bannon, who is currently, sadly, or not, serving a 4-month prison term for contempt of Congress, is scheduled to stand trial this year in the fraud case. Before his arrest, Bannon was serving as chairman of GTV, Guo told the Post in 2020. Federal prosecutors said Guo had been using GTV, which had been touted as a quote-unquote wide-ranging media company, to solicit money from investors. Between April and June 2020, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of GTV stock was sold to more than 5,500 investors, according to prosecutors. Now, Guo was arrested on March 15th, 2023 in New York. In their 12-count indictment, officials accused Guo and his financier of wire fraud, securities fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. Prosecutors said they had seized about $634 million from 21 bank accounts. Guo's sentencing is scheduled for November 19th. He could face decades in prison, the U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said. And that Bannon is looking at state charges. I am not convinced there are not federal charges coming down the pike for Bannon, but on the other hand, I would have expected maybe to have seen that by now.
Federal charges for the We Build a Wall or for this?
No, for this stuff, for his relationship with Guo, but I don't think it's necessarily clear that investigators and prosecutors had the evidence to show that, Bannon was aware or participating in some of this illegal activity. But that's $634 million. That's a lot of, that's even more than the Trump company owes. Although as interest racks up, it's not long.
It's about 8 times what they seized from Manafort in the asset forfeiture. So we're making money on these guys, the government. That's $694 million. That pays for like 10 special counsel investigations, at least. That's pretty great. All right. Thank you for that story. I mean, was hoping Bannon was going to go to trial. I think it's still on the docket for September. He still will be in prison at that time. I don't know if they're going to transport him up to Rikers and have him come back and forth in a nice orange jumpsuit. That would be my dream come true. But since my justice dreams rarely come true, he'll probably get a continuance and be able to show up in a suit and a tie and a neck brace and a wheelchair for his gout or, whatever Manafort came in with. But Manafort on the floor of the RNC. Holy God, they're getting the gang back together again.
Yeah, with Roger Stone. 2 of them together. Made me want to scream at my television.
Together again. Let's just have the Muppets in my head now. All right. Thank you for that story. We have a couple more quick stories to get to, but we have to take one last quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Our final list of new patrons to thank includes Tracy M., Pam, politicalgrifters.com, Jane Rao, Ginger Freckle, Ski Blue, and Lisa Levy. Thank all of you so much for your support, for being part of the team, for being patrons. It means the world to us, and can't thank you enough. And so with that, we have a few more final updates for you. First up, Alexander Smirnov, the guy who fabricated Jim Comer's Biden evidence, who also was indicted by David Weiss, the special counsel investigating Hunter Biden, has filed to dismiss his case, citing Judge Cannon's dismissal of the Trump Mar-a-Lago case. This is from the file. This prosecution is not legally authorized because, one, Mr. Weiss, and by implication his team, consisting of Mr. Wise, Hines, Maureen, and Regali, was unlawfully appointed as special counsel. And 2, Congress has not appropriated funds for either the investigation or prosecution of Mr. Smirnov. Mr. Smirnov respectfully asserts that the appointment of Mr. Weiss as special counsel in this case violates both the Appointments Clause and the Appropriations Clause of the United States Constitution. First, as set forth by the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida, United States versus Donald J. Trump. And then it goes on to talk about Judge Cannon's unprecedented and, frankly, in my opinion, absolutely wrong opinion, throwing out the case based on the illegitimacy of Jack Smith. I think, again, and this gets into like super into the weeds about whether or not somebody is whether or not they were ever appointed in terms of a Senate confirmed position and whether or not that
advice
triggers
and consent of Congress.
The advice and the consent because they were appointed.
Yeah, because that was the crux of Trump's filing, or at least Cannon's ruling at Mar-a-Lago, is because there was no law written, and because Jack Smith was not appointed or wasn't appointed and confirmed as a U.S. attorney like David Weiss was, that he's not eligible. But here, David Weiss was confirmed by the Senate. So you haven't circumvented the advice and consent of Congress. So you haven't upset the separation of powers. But they do argue, and I kind of tried to make this argument when Durham was appointed, that the special counsel regulations say that you have to appoint from outside the government, and Weiss was inside the government. So they're actually making two contradictory arguments, saying you have to appoint from outside the government, but also you can't appoint from outside the government because you haven't got advice and consent. So nobody can be a special counsel, whether you're appointed from somebody who was confirmed by the Senate or whether you were not confirmed by the Senate. You can't be special counsel, even though the law clearly says that the Attorney General can appoint any outside lawyer and even a foreign lawyer to work for the Department of Justice. But then, of course, Trump was like, he's too independent. He's too independent because he's funded from this permanent U.S. Treasury fund that, by the way, the Supreme Court found constitutional when, as far as the CFPB is concerned. CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is also appointed out of a similar kind of a fund, that the Supreme Court has said that's all cool for school. So that actually cuts against their arguments here. Hunter Biden has also filed to have his case thrown out that David Weiss was inappropriately appointed and funded as special counsel. I don't think any of that is going anywhere, and I am certain the 11th Circuit will overturn this ruling by Judge Cannon, but I am not certain what the Supreme Court will do, and I'm pretty sure they will take up this case.
Yeah, 100%. They will, no question in my mind. Clarence Thomas has already signaled that he's doubtful. I would imagine Sam Alito will throw in his hat to that. And so the question is, is it just the two of them? Do they create some Frankenstein's monster about trying to create this, this handmade tailored suit in London, just a decision, written for Donald Trump to get him out from under Jack Smith that somehow leaves everybody from Weiss to John Durham before him to Robert Mueller before him, leaves all of those special counsels in place, but somehow creates an escape route for Donald Trump. That would still leave the option of saying, fine, we're going to send this case down to the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida. But I guarantee you, I think it is likely the Supreme Court is going to take it. They'll schedule it for argument next term, which is 2025. They will not release a decision until the end of the term. So the only way we're going to see anything out of this is to elect Kamala Harris as president of the United States. And then, this will continue its long, strange path, maybe without Eileen Cannon, but let's, first things first, we got some business to take care of.
Yeah, same with the DC case, because now it's, I think, first week of August, we're going to get this case handed back down to the circuit court from the Supreme Court on immunity, and then the circuit court will hand it back down to Judge Chutkan, and then Judge Chutkan will start calling for briefings. There'll be an evidentiary hearing. And then Jack Smith will take a look at what evidence he's now allowed to use and decide if he still has enough to bring a case. And then he'll make a decision from there. But none of that is going to take place. The hearing might take place before the election, but no trial is going to take place before the election. And that sort of brings us to our next story here, because in Fulton County, we had left off with the appeals court in Georgia granting Trump an appeal of Judge McAfee's ruling that DA Fani Willis could stay if either she or Nathan Wade, her office could continue to prosecute if either she or Nathan Wade stepped down. And Nathan Wade did resign. But this week, the appeals court has scheduled oral arguments for that appeal for December 5th. December 5th, well after the election. So Donald has successfully pushed all his remaining cases past the election. He's still a convicted felon in Manhattan for the hush money election interference trial. He was not able to successfully push that trial back, not for not trying, And the sentencing is on hold. And of course, we'll bring those briefs to you when we find out what the DA's arguments will be on immunity. I don't think we've seen any of those yet. And when we do, we'll talk about them here on the show. And then the sentencing, if necessary, will happen on September 18th. If you asked me a year ago, I'd say there's no way that he's immune from any of this, nor is any of the evidence immune. These are all private acts. But I can't predict legal stuff anymore because of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And they, I think, have signaled very clearly how far they're willing to go. Again, this is not a deferential view of the presidency. This is a deferential view of Donald Trump. And I think the problem from running all these cases to their logical conclusion is I don't think any prosecutor has a real firm idea, or courts for that matter, district court judges or, state judges have a real solid idea of, some of the boundaries of what the Supreme Court said was immune. And so they're going to have to stumble through it. I think there's a decent chance the Supreme Court doesn't exactly know. And so it's just going to take, this endless loop of appeal and remand and appeal and remand until we finally get to the end. But it could be, the sad part is I can see it taking the entirety of the next administration to finally get Donald Trump some legal, sort of justice. And that's assuming he isn't reelected. So it's nothing fast.
Yeah. Well, I've long said, Pete, that I've learned in the last 8 years that justice doesn't always come in the form that we think it's going to come in. In the beginning, we all thought justice was a big tackle and shackle of Donald Trump with the FBI windbreakers and the handcuffs and marching him away and ending up in a jail cell. Once you learn a little bit about the justice system, your expectations on justice change a little bit. And I started talking about, hey, look, he's broke, angry, not well. Nobody loves him. He doesn't have any friends or family that give a shit about him. Like Lawrence O'Donnell said, every day for the rest of his days on this earth are going to be worse than the last for him. No more good days, for Donald Trump. And there's some justice there. But now with Kamala Harris, a prosecutor and a Black woman, basically the antidote to everything that Donald Trump is, beating him, there's a real sense of justice there to me.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, if there's I think the last thing, former President Trump wants is to lose to a woman. The one possible thing worse than that, in his perspective, is to lose to a woman of color. And I think a
prosecutor,
right? Prosecutor versus a convict, right? I mean, that's the ads and the T-shirts write themselves. So, again, I think I'm heartened to end on a happy note, not the gray note that we often find ourselves in. The amount of coming together, look, there's a honeymoon period, no doubt about it. There's an enthusiasm here that is going to, they're going to be attacks and counterattacks and smears and all kinds of nasty stuff. But I think for the first time in a long time, you have a really sizable amount of the population that is sitting there and sees with some enthusiasm a candidate they think can beat Donald Trump, and they're putting their money behind it. So, I think that's great. And, we've got several months of a lot of hard work to do, but at least now we got a plan. And an imperfect plan pursued with vigor is always better than sort of navel gazing, trying to figure out and
or
perfect
a perfect
something.
Plan that takes too long to put together.
Go. We got there's a workable plan. So everybody, let's dive in. And I'm optimistic in a way that I wasn't for a while.
Big picture. I started the Mueller She Wrote podcast because I was looking for justice, and I think we may be coming full circle this November for just those reasons. So anyway, justice doesn't always look how you think it's going to look, but don't miss it because it's nice when it happens. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to our new patrons. Again, Pete, I'm real excited. You're coming to San Francisco August 24th. We're going to do that live show with Olivia Troy. And then on August 16th, we have the live show in DC at the Hamilton. Tickets are selling fast. It's me, you, Andy McCabe, Brian Greer, Glenn Kirshner, and Dana Goldberg. And then, of course, we're going to have our patron gala. Check your inboxes if you're interested in signing up for that. Dinner's on me, open bar. and you can come and have a fun time with a bunch of incredibly enthusiastic, like-minded, happy people. So thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
No, let's get busy. Get everybody that, hopefully you're feeling energized. Share that energy with your friends, with your family, particularly if you have kids of voting age, if you know people who are the demographic that is going to get Kamala Harris across the finish line is the 18 to 26, or the youngest group. So if they're engaged, if they turn out at the levels they did in the midterms and in 2020, or build on that, we're going to be in good shape. But, it's going to take everybody kind of pulling in the same direction towards the finish line. So bottle this enthusiasm that you're feeling right now, store it up, and let's run until the finish line in November.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pete. Always good to see you, everybody. We will see you on the bonus episode if you're a patron this weekend, and then, of course, next week for the episode. In the meantime, Daily Beans is out there for you if you need some news with swearing, where Dana Goldberg and I walk you through all the news that you're probably not seeing on mainstream media right now. I don't think anybody really knew that Guo Wengui, who we've been following for such a long time, was convicted this week. Yeah. Bob Menendez, sorry, I think we were going to talk about him, but we kind of ran out of time. Anyway, he's also convicted, but I think he's told people he's going to resign, but he hasn't yet. I don't know. We'll see. They can expel him without a hearing now, but they still need a 2/3 vote. But anyway, in that chamber, I think they could probably get it, because I'm pretty sure every Dem and every Republican would probably vote to expel that guy for different reasons. But it would also be very interesting to see a Republican vote to expel somebody for criminal activity, but then their party leader is a convicted felon. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. Thanks so much. I've been Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Struck.
Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.